Good morning. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to revisit an old subject that we had a couple of times now. And I'm sorry this is the third time, but I actually have concrete stuff that I can show to illustrate this headspace, this mysterious headspace that, at least it's mysterious to me anyway, or was. Um, what I have is, as people know, I have two Colombian 1912 Steer short rifles. They've been converted over from the original 7 by 57 to the 30-06, and so that they could be more in keeping with what we were using for ammo, and that was done in the early 50s. I have the two guns, the two rifles, and they are a tale of two barrels because the more that I investigated, I found out that this one, the older one, they're both born in 1912, but this one is older, at least the barrel, because what they did was in the 1950s, this place, our Fromage, what they did was they rebored it, and they bored it out for the 30-06, and that meant they also had to redo the chamber and so forth, and that's what they did. The second gun, and the reason I know that it's a original Steer barrel, is because the serial number, and there's also a Circle T on it. I don't know if you get the Circle T. Let's see what the hell it is. There's also a Circle T on it. I don't know if you can get down there, but anyway, there it is, the Circle T. You can see it down underneath, and that's the symbol that Steer used for their stuff. That's their trademark sign or their stamp, acceptance stamp, whatever. The other gun, on the other hand, doesn't have any of that. It's slick right here at the top of the barrel, except for one thing. It's got a Belgian crown on it. Just a little Belgian crown that you might miss if you weren't really looking for it. And I looked it under the magnifying glass, and yes, it is. It's a crown that goes up and a little cross on top. What happened was, I believe, this is my opinion, is that when they went to convert it over to the 30-06, the barrel was, they weren't going to bore it out. It needed to be replaced. In the 1950s, Columbia was using FN as their supplier. So I think what happened was they took an FN barrel and put it on the Steer gun. So that's what you have here. It was a new barrel. If you look inside, the rifling is actually a little newer looking than, say, the other rifle. So I'm pretty sure that's what they did. The problem that we have is, as a rifle gets used, especially over 70 years, 70 years, I guess, for 1950, the chamber will wear out. In the chamber, as we talked about before with headspace, I got rid of all my bullets. Hold on. Okay, especially for the bottleneck ones, what they do is this sits up against the inside of the chamber, and then the bolt head comes in and it squeezes it there, and it holds it real tight so that when it shoots, it goes where it's supposed to go instead of going jiggling around or whatever. It goes out the end. But as time goes on, the part of the chamber that this rests on starts to wear out. And when it wears out, that means that the round starts inching, or by thousandths of an inch, inside the chamber. So what happens is, less and less of this is sticking out, and that causes a couple of problems. And one of the problems that you'd notice right away is that your firing pin doesn't hit the back on the primer where it's supposed to hit, and you can't get it to fire. That's a good thing. The bad thing is that because there's a space now between the bolt head and where that's sitting, I'm exaggerating here, we're talking thousandths of an inch. When you fire, it'll shoot back like that. And the number one, it puts a stress on your bolt, um, which can be catastrophic. Number two, it can release the gases out the back instead of all of them going out the front like they're supposed to, which happened to me. And you can actually have what they call a case separation, which is where the casing itself actually breaks in two, and all of that propellant and gases and everything, they're coming at you, and that's a bad thing. So what I've got is the one rifle. I'm trying to make sure I have the right one. This is the rifle it's a steer barrel. It was bored out for 360, 30-06. And what you have is you have the ways of testing to see if the chamber is the right length for the bolt. So what I've done is I've taken the Mauser bolt, I've removed the firing pin, I've removed the extractor. That's not the extractor. That's a striplet. But I removed the extractor, and so that there's no interference on the bolt head. So the first one you check this is called the go. The go is for the 30-06. It measures a distance of 1.940 inches. Okay. And what it does is it checks to see if there's enough space that it's in far enough that without the extractor on here, it's kind of tricky. There you go. Okay. So what should happen, this thing should just fall forward. It does. There's nothing there that holds it. Ooh. Good thing I got a rubber mat down there. The next test you do is called the no-go. And what the no-go does is it checks to make sure that it's sticking out far enough that you'll be able to hit it with the firing pin, and that it's sticking out far enough that the bolt head will push the round up against the chamber in the place where it's supposed to. So that's it. Now what happens here is you can see it won't close. And the reason that it won't close is because this gauge is actually just a little bit longer than it needs to be, so that you can say that it's a little bit longer than it needs to be, so that it won't be able to close because it's too much sticking out. So if this passes that test like that, then you figure that your chamber is pretty good. So on the steer barrel, everything looks like it's doing pretty good. Now the FN barrel, which is actually younger than the steer barrel because it was probably put on in the early 50s when they reconfigured these guns. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to check magnifying glass. Okay, we're going to check to see if enough of it fits inside that the bolt can close. It does. So that's the go test. The next test is the no-go test. What should happen here is that because it's sticking out, that the bolt should not be able to close on it. Just in the hole. Okay. Nothing. not even a whisper. Sometimes if you they say that if you can get at least a whisper, or so you failed those two, and you say, well, I guess my rifle's messed up and the chamber's messed up, and I don't know. Well, there's another gauge. It's even just a little bit longer. And this little bit longer gauge, which we talked about the no-go being at 1.940. I mean, that was the go. The no-go is 4/1000ths of an inch. So the 4/1000 of an inch meant the difference between closing the bolt and not closing the bolt. So what I've got now is this is called the field gauge. And this is the field gauge, which is the one that's most important to me anyway, as far as for the older guns. These are the first two are normally used by a gunsmith who's boring out a chamber to see that it at least reached the minimum and the maximum depth that's supposed to be. This is the one that's used, and this is shows the maximum amount of space that you can have between the cartridge and the bolt head and still have it safe. So like I said, this is at 1.950. So we're actually up 10/1000ths from where we started with the original. So I'm going to put this one in. No, there's nothing there. So what that means is that the chamber itself is too worn out, and it's allowing the cartridges to go in too deep. And when they go in too deep, if you fire them, because you may not be able to, because the firing pin may not reach the cartridge. Like I said, that's the good thing. And then of course you have all the catastrophic stuff that can happen if there's too much room in there. Above the no-go, we're up 6/1000ths of an inch, and I did some testing on it to see where it would actually catch, and I would have to add another 7/1000ths of an inch on top of that. So it's pretty deep. It's deep. The gun is not safe to shoot. There's little that can be done other than I think I told you about how you take the barrel off and you shave off a couple of thousandths. Well, on this you probably have to shave off about 7 or 8/1000ths, and then redo the chamber so that it'll fit. Which for me, a gun that cost $135, it's not worth it. I already have bought all the stuff, so it looks like I may have a wall hanger, but doing reloading, there is a way that you can configure your ammunition so that what you'll do is go in and mess with the shoulder and actually push the shoulder back, so that way this will stick out longer, and that way it'll work. Of course, it's a whole new process that I just started looking at, and I can honestly say that I don't know what to do with it yet. This was originally the barrel that belonged to the young man that I was helping to build his gun. So what we're going to have to do is trade out the guns, and I'll take this one, and it'd be a wall hanger, but it'll also be something that I can mess with. One of the other things that could possibly have been wrong with the headspace was the bolt that I bought could be for some reason too short to because there are fluctuations. Well, I took every bolt that I had for all my Mausers, which I have 8 Mausers, and I took every bolt, and they all failed. So to me, that sometimes you can swap them out as long as the headspace is correct on them. You can swap the bolts out and find the one that works best for which gun, but that didn't happen. So it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal about swapping out the guns themselves. I would rather somebody get a safe gun and one that they can shoot than to have somebody get a gun that's just that's not safe, especially somebody that's young. And but anyway, so that's the concrete evidence, and hopefully the last time I will have to give a lecture or want to give a lecture on headspace. We'll talk more about headspace though when we talk about headspace in relation to a cartridge, which is down the road, and you know, and then we'll both learn what we need to do with that. So, all right. So anyway, that's the tale of two barrels made in two different places, put on the same type of gun. One of them, the barrel didn't wear as good as the other one, and this is something that's imperative that somebody is, if you are restoring old guns and you are working with old guns, that you do this because it's just I didn't when I started, and I was lucky up until the 30-06 round blew on me, which was a lesson, and with these old guns you just have to. I mean, the receivers themselves in 1912, and this barrel's from the 50s, and the other barrel is from 1912. So anyway, well, be safe, and I'm gonna have a gun tomorrow. I found one that I could do a little story on, and I miss doing that. I I just don't have the, the necessary cash to buy new guns or different guns, but I will present them when I can. But I have it's a lever action, and it's not a Winchester, and it'll be fun to do a gun again. All right. Well, thank you, and I'll see you tomorrow.